the first half, I don't know what really was going on, especially on defense, because they could not get off the field. It felt like the Vikings converted every 3rd and short or 4th and short that they went for, and they just possessed the ball. And quite frankly, I thought the Vikings were there to be had. I didn't think they played great offensively. I think they played just well enough to stay in the game, believe it or not. And then the second half, of course, for the Jets, they made some adjustments. Mike White started throwing the ball down the field. Garrett Wilson was getting more involved. And they, like you said, they couldn't. It was a tail of the red zone issue. So the Vikings, when they were in the red zone, they ended up with a touchdown. When the Jets ended it in the end zone, they either didn't score or they had to settle for a field goal. So, it's frustrating on both sides for both sets of fan bases. And that Giant game, when it started out 10-0, I'm like, uh-oh. This is going to be an ugly one. But then they fought back. And I thought Daniel Jones played great. I felt like his life depended on it. But then again, when you look back and you say to yourself, all right, what happened in this game? The Commanders had the ball for almost 40 minutes in regulation.
Yeah.
I mean, the Giant offense was never on the field. And, there were some nice plays made by a few guys on the Giants. Kayvon Thibodeau almost had a sack for safety. And then, of course, Ojulari comes back, and he has a sack and a strip sack. I mean, it was great. And then you have this taunting penalty that out of nowhere, which basically at that point in the game, the Giants are going to, you got to assume that that's going to be a first down, and they're going to continue to move the ball. And at worst, they're going to attempt somewhere around a 40-yard field goal. At worst.
Yeah.
And, they'll end up going up by 10 points and winning the game. But that penalty does not make any sense to me, because Feliciano's not that kind of guy.
No.
He's never going to taunt an opponent. Maybe he'll fight a little bit or push and shove a little bit after a play. But he's going down there, and you can clearly see it. I've watched it 100 different times.
Sure.
You can see he's going to his teammate Darius Slayton to say that's a hell of a play. He is trying to pick his teammate up.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what was said. We're not out on the field, but I can't imagine it could have been something that bad that was said where the official's like, I got to throw a flag in this critical situation. My God, that was a strange one. There's a couple different times I thought for sure that the Giants were going to put this away. Fourth quarter, when they had the Commanders backed up there on their goal line and they got them off the field and the Commanders punted and the Giants took over at the 45.
It did nothing.
Yeah, I was thinking, okay. I mean, they're either a couple first downs here, maybe even kick a field goal would be fine. Did absolutely nothing. Of course, the fourth down at the end of the fourth quarter where Taylor Heineke's got to roll out and make this miraculous play down the field to keep the game going. I thought there was no shot that the Commanders were going to convert there, and I thought that Graham Gano was going to kick that field goal. I mean, we've seen...
He's kicking into the wind 58 yards.
But I still thought he was going to make it, man. How many of those have we seen this year?
I know, but he's been great. But he also knew in pregame warm-up that I think he hit a 55-yarder, and then he might have tried one from 56 or 57, and it hit the crossbar, or the upright or something. He knew that he was really out of range. He hit it good, but he was kicking it into the wind. It should have never come down to that anyway.
Sure.
I mean, and he's been money for the Giants the last 3 years. That's not even a discussion point.
And what about the fourth down on the previous possession and punting as opposed to going for it, where it seemed like at that point the tie was probably the most likely outcome when they punted the football?
Right. So I think that the Giants were thinking, listen, a tie is not a bad thing for us. I know it's going to send our fans home unhappy, but it's not a bad thing. They stay in front of the Commanders, and it's Coach Cowher sitting there going, I this is like one of those really weird situations that coaches find themselves in. And, if you go for it and you make it and you end up kicking a field goal and winning the game, it's an awesome thing by the coach. But if he ends up losing a game there because they don't make it, and their offense, let's face it, wasn't great all day, I think now all of a sudden, you question the wisdom of the decision-making. But in this case, and I hate to say it, a tie is good for the Giants, even though it doesn't feel that way this morning. And I know it didn't feel that way yesterday, especially after that fourth down play by Heineke.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that it's good. It's better than a loss, but it's not good because we looked at 3 games if the Giants wanted to get to 10 wins that they had to take care of, and they were all home games. It was the Lions at home, it was the Commanders at home, and it was the Colts at home later in the year. So far, they've played 2 of those games, and they're 0-1-1 in those 2 games. So
Sounds like the Rangers.
I mean, that just to me, is not something necessarily that's great. Now, the Seahawks end up winning yesterday. The Commanders are on a bye this week, and the Giants have to play the Eagles. So if the Giants lose, then they've got the Commanders' same record, 7-5-1, and going to the Commanders after a bye. I don't love the situation that they're in. That would have been a huge win for them in trying to stay in the playoff race. And I think it really comes down to, how Seattle plays the rest of this year, if the Giants are going to hang on to that last wild card or not.
So can they get in at 9-7-1? That's the
question.
question.
Yeah, right, exactly. Which I didn't think was going to be the case a couple weeks ago, but now that seems like more and more of a possibility.
I mean, the fact is they stayed in front of Washington, and that was the most important thing. And they didn't lose their playoff spot that they had previously.
No.
So they're right there, essentially, and they're ahead of Seattle simply because of that tie.
Yeah, and I remember
because if they were tied, then Seattle would have would be in front of them because they beat the Giants.
So the Seahawks have one really easy game on paper with the Panthers going there, and then two very difficult games to end the season, where they host the 49ers. We'll see with Brock Purdy, but still the 49ers defense is as good as it gets. And then they have to go to Arrowhead in week 18 week 17. It'll be December 24th.
So in other words, the Chiefs will still be playing for that game.
Right, exactly. So that'll be Christmas Eve. They'll still be playing. So in the next three, they've got Panthers, Niners, Chiefs, then Jets, and then Rams, who are completely dead.
Right. So here's the thing: that one tie is better than the extra loss. You know, and that's basically what it comes down to. And it's right in front of you because you see the Seahawks and you see the Giants and you see the situation. If like, you know, the Seahawks, let's say the Seahawks end up, 9-8, and the Giants end up 9-7-1.
Sure.
Then the Giants are going.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way you got to look at it.
Yeah, and now that sort of changes things, too, with tiebreakers with this tie as well, because the head-to-head tiebreak is something that doesn't really factor in anymore because these teams are not going to end up with the same record, at least unless the Seahawks end up tying.
And that's why, unless the Seahawks end up tying.
Right.
But that's why the tie is important. So, and don't think for a moment that Brian Daboll doesn't know that going into overtime.
Yeah,
there's somebody telling him on his staff, look, man, Seattle may have lost. They didn't know where Seattle was going to be. In Seattle's game, they almost lost that damn game.
Right.
So they were playing later on in the afternoon. But he knows, and they know, that a tie actually works out in their favor. It just feels unsatisfying.
Yeah.
And as I think Kayvon Thibodeau said yesterday, you know what? He goes, we just played a football game and left. Right. That's what it was. We just kind of left.
Right.
Everybody just kind of left, and everybody had a bad taste in their mouth because they want to win. Everybody wants to win, but I'm trying to tell Giant fans, just hang in there.
Yeah.
That you can see by the fact that Seattle was sitting behind you in the playoff race, that half situation, the tie, works in your favor.
Sure. And I do think that them playing better yesterday and coming back down 10-0 and having that lead, I think, was encouraging, too, for them. Now, you mentioned how you thought that the Vikings could be had in that second half,
yes.
and of course they could have. The Vikings played their best half of football, I think, the entire year in that first half. And I was watching the game with 300 Jets fans yesterday at Pace's Steakhouse with this Winners Brothers event, and I kept telling them, every single Viking game is a close, crazy agita game. And this will end up that way because that is the MO. So don't worry, you're going to come back, you're going to have a chance to win. And it worked out exactly like that. But it was just, think about the difference. If Braxton Berrios just catches that football, then we're sitting here today talking about the Jets at 8-4. I really believe that.
If Mike White just throws the ball a little bit further, like he was just a little off a few times yesterday.
Yeah.
He threw behind Conklin, the throw that ended up in the interception to Corey Davis. I would have liked to see Corey flatten it a little bit more, but that's a tough catch for him.
Well, I was going to put that one on Mike White. The ball popped up in the air.
True, and I'm not putting it on Corey Davis either.
Yeah.
That's a tough play, and we see a lot of that every week in the NFL. It's just unfortunate that it had to happen to Mike White. I think the one thing I was really looking forward to is him staying away from the interceptions.
Sure.
And I keep telling you, all these young kids, and even guys like Mike, who's not young, but he hasn't played a lot. He was 2-2 coming into yesterday's game. This is his 5th game he started.
Yeah, but the interceptions yesterday, to me, as we mentioned, there's a deflection on the first one, and then the last one. I mean, he said at the end of the game he did not want to have the ball in his hands at the end of the game.
He's right.
He had to take a risk. He had to take a shot, and he threw the ball down the field, and it ended up getting picked off.
I'll tell you that catch by Garrett Wilson over the middle. He gets hit by a couple tacklers and then goes down the sideline. I thought that was a touchdown.
Yeah, and then
you see he steps out of bounds. I mean,
and then of course they hold him to a field goal.
I mean, how electric is that kid?
No, of course, another tremendous game.
Oh, my God, that kid is electric.
But think about the difference there, too. I mean, you end up holding him to a field goal there. It was 20-12 at that point, and you would have had an opportunity maybe to tie the game if you went for 2. It ends up being 20-15. I mean, these red zone woes. I had a problem with the Jets' play calling yesterday, especially in the first half. Got a little bit better in the second half, but I also didn't like the red zone calls in the second half by Mike LaFleur. But there was too much of this, screen throwing the ball onto the flat stuff that seemed like the first option. And as I talked about all week, the soft underbelly of this Vikings defense is down the middle of the field, like that 10 to 15-yard range. Every single team had taken advantage of them there, and it didn't seem like the Jets were trying to exploit that at all. And they were playing into the Vikings' hands. It's why they only scored 6 points, and it took a 60-yard field goal to get that 6th point in the first half. And then you saw in the second half when they started pressing it a little bit down the field and pushing the ball down the field, and they had more success. But I thought they should have been running the ball more in the red zone than they were. I mean, it felt like it was just, we have to throw. You have to
understand something. So you have Corey Davis out there, you got Garrett Wilson out there, and you got Elijah Moore out there, and you got Conklin out there. I mean, it's like as an offensive coordinator, I want to get the ball in those guys' hands. And I'm trying, with Zonovan Knight, I'm trying to run the ball through the middle. I know they had James Robinson. There was a miscommunication on one of the touchdown attempts between Garrett Wilson and Mike White. But, they have the plays. And Braxton Berrios is open. It's a perfect play call. It's a perfect play design. And it's just Mike White is just a little off. And I bet you if you sat down with Braxton Berrios and you asked him if he should have had that ball, he'll tell you 100 times he should have had that ball.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, it's like the play calling was fine.
Yeah, I didn't like them. I didn't like them.
What comes down.
Well, I didn't see that third down call because it was a 4th down with the Berrios one, and that probably should have worked.
Garrett Wilson were not on the same page.
But to me, I would have tried to run the ball again there on 3rd down. They were. I don't know. I could have sworn the way I was feeling watching it from my perspective was they were going to run the ball on 3rd down. They were going to get a touchdown. That's what I thought was going to happen. And then when he ended up dropping back, I was happy to see that. So I just in that situation.
They ran the ball on 1st and 2nd down. They get it down to the 1-inch line, whatever happens.
Yeah.
Then on 3rd down, there's the miscommunication between their best wide receiver and their quarterback. They're trying to get the ball to their best player on offense.
Sure.
Just like the Vikings would try to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. They're trying to get the ball to Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
And there's a miscommunication where it looks like, I don't know what Garrett Wilson was doing, but Mike White thought he was going to the back of the corner, and he just ended up stopping in the middle of the end zone for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. I have to go back and look at it. But then, on 4th down, they have a great play call. The guy is open.
Yeah, that should have been converted.
It was open.
Yeah.
I mean, so I can't sit here and say that the play calls were wrong. I mean, they tried to run it twice, and they tried to throw it twice. And on the second throw, the guy's open. The ball's a little behind him. But I guarantee you that he would tell you that he should have made the catch. And I guarantee you that Mike White will tell you I needed to put the ball in front of him.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Both those guys took responsibility.
Yeah.
And another thing that was proven as we continue to talk about this game throughout the day, but another thing that was proven this weekend is that this team cannot stand Zach Wilson because they wore all sorts of Mike effing White shirts. Garrett Wilson talked about Mike White at the end of this game like he was Jerry Rice and Mike White was Joe Montana, and they had won all these Super Bowls together. Like the way he was talking about him, I wish I could have won it for him. I wish we could have gotten it done for him. I mean,
I know.
Think about that as compared to where we came from.
I know you were at Paces, but yesterday, we opened the NFL today, and we all open up with, different points of view about different things. And the thing that I opened with was, I have never seen this before. Now, I have seen people, and Coach Cowher has seen people, and we've all seen people wear T-shirts reflecting certain teammates on the team for whatever reason. Maybe it was Jerome Bettis playing in the Super Bowl, in Detroit, where
Yeah.
he's from.
Right.
So they're all wearing Bettis T-shirts.
Well, yesterday was another good example. Craig Ironhead Hayward and Cam Hayward honoring his dad down in Atlanta. The Steelers supported him.
Right, and Connor Haywood scores a touchdown.
Right, exactly. Yeah, something like that.
Something like that is usually fine. But to wear a T-shirt of a player who's replacing a player who's still on the team,
Right.
I've never seen that before.
And a guy who is the number 2 overall pick and supposed to be the future of your franchise. We're not talking about him replacing Joe Flacco, who is going to retire at some point soon, or replacing some guy who was an undrafted free agent who didn't get it done. We're talking about the future of the franchise. A guy who was supposed to be the leader, and this team is just completely steamrolling him because they don't like him.
It is, yeah. It seems that way, and it really it comes down to what you do on the field. Everybody will like somebody if they do the right thing on the field and can handle it on the field. And Mike White, say whatever you want, he didn't have great arm strength, but I will say this: he's got the respect of the locker room, and that's why, even when Rob Saleh said last week, we'd like to get Zach back out there at some point this year. You could have a major revolt in that locker room if that happens.
No, there's no way he can put him back on the field this year. There's just absolutely no way, unless there's some sort of injury. And even in that situation, I think it'll probably be Flacco over Wilson. It's over for this year.
Right. I feel the same way. And I would just say this, that both the Jets and the Giants are now ready to go into the gauntlet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they are going into the gauntlet, and will determine whether or not they remain relevant, after January, or after December, I should say.